Richard Sherman, good morning to you. You made the case yesterday that with an aging and beat-up offensive line, the Cowboys would be better off resting some of their starters Sunday at Washington and heading healthier into the playoffs, even if it happens to be on the road. I'm intrigued by the idea, but still unconvinced. Would you please tell Michael more?
Well, Skip, you're talking about an offensive line that has missed a lot of games this season. Your guy Tyler Smith missed 2 initially to start the season with a hamstring injury, tore his plantar fascia in this last game against the Lions. They're saying that he can play through it, but I don't think it's necessary. I think if you don't think you can beat the Washington Commanders with some of your backups playing, then I don't think you're prepared for the playoffs anyway. And Tyron Smith missed the Miami game with a back injury. And so do you want to risk him missing these playoff games where you don't get a second chance? You don't get another go at it. You don't get another bite at the apple. I think it's in your team's best interest to rest your left tackle for the potential four-game stretch to push you to the Super Bowl and give you the best chance, rather than have him play a semi-meaningless game against the Commanders that you should and could win without him playing in the game. And Tyler Smith, we talk about his plantar fascia. I don't know. I've never played with that injury. I've never had that injury. They say it's better to fully tear it than to partially tear it, because if you fully tear it, then you don't have the lingering pain. It's kind of a pain tolerance thing that you got to deal with. But Stephon Gilmore is the same. You know, a lot of legs on a corner throughout the season. He's had to follow number 1 receivers. Do you need him against the Washington Commanders to win this game? You shouldn't, but I think he's healthy enough to play. But these are the things you have to think about if you're thinking about making a major run in these playoffs. And if you don't think about these things, that's when you run into these stumbles and you run into situations where, you know, Tyron's sitting there in year 13, banged up in the playoffs, and you're trying to figure out how to keep him out there, and you can't because you decided not to rest him in a Week 17 game where you could have.
So, Richard, to sum it up, you would rest Tyron and Tyler and Zach Martin and Stephon Gilmore?
No.
No?
No, I mean, Zach Martin seems relatively healthy, unless I'm missing something and he's not healthy.
Two games back, he got kicked in the quad, and he missed the
quad
rest of that game. But, Okay, go, Michael.
Listen, and I understand what Richard's saying from a standpoint of the wear and tear on our big guys, and they do have some wear and tear. But I've always been a little leery of this scenario when we start getting down to the end of the season and everybody's talking about resting or not resting. You know, I subscribe to what Jimmy used to always say is you don't just lose the Sunday on the game day. If I tell you this early on, I lose the whole week of preparation. So you're not mentally prepared to really play a game. That's what I hate. And the Cowboys are the worst with it. They're the worst. Whenever they rest players, they come out the worst. They come out sloppy. They just can't stay on track. You know, because they don't have the pressing coach to push them through it. They really take the day off. They take the mental off. They take the time off, and they come back. And I said, "Oh my God, we didn't need that rest." And I worry about that. Somehow, some way, what Mike McCarthy has to do is thread this needle. He has to be able to somehow keep them motivated, keep them involved, keep them moving, and most importantly, win this game so you can play at home as opposed to going on the road. You cannot go into this game thinking, well, I can pull players and we can still win this game. I tell you all the time, everybody always have a plan. The game will dictate the plan. We talking basketball. They wanted to play LeBron this many minutes. That's great. You got a thought. But the game going to tell you what will happen. And right here, the game has spoken. The Dallas Cowboys got to try to win this last game to get what they want. That's home field advantage. I know you don't get that bye with that number 2 seed, but to bring everybody into AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys have played much better is absolutely worth playing everybody.
Okay. Richard Sherman, there's much wisdom in what you have to say. And to your point about Tyler Smith, I've been doing this for a long time. I have never, ever heard of a football player tearing his plantar fascia. Never heard of it. I'm very experienced with that injury because if you've run as many marathons as I have, you are going to have plantar fasciitis. It's going to get inflamed where when you wake up in the morning, you can't even walk on it. I don't know if you guys ever had that in your football career, but the point is they don't tear. I have no idea. How did he tear his plantar fascia? It's impossible, but they're making the case now, as Richard pointed out, that to tear it is actually better than to inflame it because now it just sits there limp and it's uncomfortable. But if you can sort of tolerate the discomfort of it, you can play. So I don't know. Okay, so Richard, here's my point back to you. Remember, I'm lifelong diehard Cowboy fan. Remember, I covered this team starting from about 1978 till about 1997. So I'm steeped in the history of this team and this rivalry with Washington. All I know, Richard, is the heavens opened on Sunday. They opened, and the NFL God said, let there be Dallas. And we have had, as you well know, you have detailed all of our struggles on the road, and all of a sudden we have two potential home games to get to an NFC championship game that we are presuming would be back at San Francisco. Maybe the scene of our crime.
Unless Rams can go into San Francisco and somebody knock off San Francisco, then you get that into Dallas.
You can have three.
It happens.
It happens. So to me, you don't look the gift horse in the eye. You don't, or in the mouth. You don't. What you do is you damn the torpedoes. You go, I know there's high risk here, but it's high reward. So it's every man on deck to me. I'm going to risk getting Tyron Smith further beat up, inflaming his back injury. I'm going to risk Zach Martin. I'm going to risk Stephon Gilmore because, to Michael's point, I need these players to believe it's do or die because they don't want to have to go on the road throughout the playoffs. So if you go play this game the way you should, you're 13.5-point favorites, you should win this game. But trust me on this, Richard Sherman, I have seen 1,000 times, it feels like, in this rivalry where the underdog rose up and spoiled the party for the favorite. And you don't think Washington would feel like they could save their season? They're, 4-12 right now. And you don't think if they could knock off the hated Dallas Cowboys at Washington, that would be their Super Bowl? So I've seen crazy things happening in this. Back to 1974, if the longtime Cowboy fans remember the Thanksgiving Day game, Clint Longley came in for Roger Staubach and shocked the then called the Redskins, obviously, with a late touchdown pass. That's the kind of miracles that happen for the underdog. I don't want to see them lose this game. Remember, they stunk it up last year.
The 1-15 season was we only beat the Washington team who was just recently won a Super Bowl. They had just recently won a Super Bowl. And that's the only team we beat.
Yeah.
Skip, Herb, I hear you, but what you're failing to understand is the end goal of your season is to be holding the trophy. Not to beat the Washington Commanders, not to have the 2 seed. And you should, I'm not saying this, if they were willing to rest Tyron Smith versus the Miami Dolphins in a have-to-have-it game at the time, then I would assume they'd be willing to rest him right now with the potential to have him for the rest of the playoffs. A back injury is nothing to play over. It's nothing to fool with. And it definitely doesn't need 60 more snaps if you can help it. And again, you have a capable backup who has played well when given his opportunities, well enough to protect Dak Prescott's backside in a game against the Washington Commanders and a team that traded away their 2 best pass rushers to the Chicago Bears and Montez Sweat and Chase Young to the 49ers. So this isn't the ferocious pass rush that the Commanders have had in past years. This is a different team. So look, you know me. I think, we're going to do the dance. But in order to give yourself the best chance to be successful in the postseason, Tyron Smith isn't practicing as is. So I'm not worried about his intensity level. He's only participating in walkthroughs on Friday and walkthrough on Saturday. So it's not like this is going to be a different week for him. This is going to be the same week. These are veteran players. These aren't young guys who are like, man, I get the week off. Like, I'm about to go party. These are dudes who understand the task at hand. They understand what we're playing for. They understand the point in the season we are. And they understand it even more so because they're in the twilight of their careers now. So they're saying, hey, I'm about to give everything I got for this run. Now, I'm not saying rest everybody. You don't rest the young guys that are ready to play. Micah Parsons needs to rest. There's a lot of players on this defense that need to go out there and play. A lot of players on this offense. But the guys that are banged up, if you lose them in a meaningless game, week 17, you'll be sick. January 15th, Skip.
Okay,
it's
Richard.
Not meaningless, though,
Yeah.
It's not meaningless. You can't describe it with that word. You can't put that word prior to game. You can't see a meaningless game when we start out and play all of these games for seeding and for positioning in the tournament, in the postseason, and you have an opportunity to go and get the number 2 seed. Now, here's where I think can really be something good if it happens now, because remember, I don't know, what time does Philly play? What time does Philly play? Because I know the NFL, they set these schedules so, the games count late and you have to play.
I think they're up against us. I think they're same.
Okay, so same time. They play the same time.
Yeah.
So now you are clock watching. So this scenario works out perfectly. If I can get everybody going through a week of practice, and then I can clock watch, and if somebody over the Phillies playing wants to beat Philly, and you see the thing going well over there, and you say, okay, now we're good, win, lose anyway, because it looks like they're about to lose. I start pulling players. But I got to have this second seed if I'm the Dallas Cowboys. I got to do what I got to do to get
But having Tyron Smith that's not the difference maker. You should be able to win this game. You should have a good enough team to say, hey, Tyron, go rest. We got this one. You're a 13-point favorite for a reason. And if you cannot beat the Washington Commanders without Tyron Smith, then your problems are bigger than what I think they are anyway. And so I hear what you're saying, Skip, that the risk is worth the reward. It's not. It's a high risk, low reward situation because, cool, you get the number 2 seed, but you lose your left tackle for the playoffs. That's not worth the risk. Okay. If you get the 3 seed and you telling me I got Tyron Smith for the entire playoffs, I guarantee you take that instead of potentially losing him. This is a back injury. This is like he's going to take on blocks every single play. This is not corner. This is not position where you can avoid contact. This is offensive line. You're getting contact every single play.
Richard, can you guarantee Michael and me that the Cowboys will